We often think of medieval princesses in terms of fairy tales as beautiful young ladies living in luxurious comfort, wearing fancy gowns and tall, pointy hats, waiting for some knight to rescue them. But the reality was far less romantic and far more dangerous. Between 1200 and 1400, roughly 1/3 of royal women died before age 30, facing arranged marriages, dangerous pregnancies, and political manipulation at every turn. Life for these women wasn't about fairy tales and romance. It was about survival. Here's what life was really like as a medieval princess. Hey, quick thing before we start. If you actually listen to these regularly, hit like or subscribe. I always wonder where everyone's at, so comment your city and what time it is. Weird to think some of you are having breakfast in London while I'm recording this at night here in the States. Okay, let's head back to medieval Europe. Trust me, it's going to be quite a ride. But first, get comfortable. Seriously. Adjust those pillows, pull up that blanket, because where we're going, you're going to want to be cozy. Alright, so you're waking up in a stone chamber in a castle in 13th century England. First thing that hits you is the cold, not the cute, nippy kind that makes you snuggle deeper into your comforter. This is the kind of cold that stabs right through you, makes your bones ache, the kind that has you seeing your breath in the air before you even open your eyes. Unlike your nice memory foam mattress with its Egyptian cotton sheets, you're lying on a straw-filled mattress. Yeah, actual straw. And it's not alone in there. The rustling you hear, that's the mice. They live in your bed now. Oh, and those little bites you feel? Fleas and bed bugs. Your constant companions that no amount of status can protect you from. The room is nearly pitch black because, surprise, there's no electricity, no light switches to flip, no bedside lamps, just thick darkness, occasionally pierced by a sliver of dawn light from the narrow window slits that let in more cold air than actual sunlight. And the smell. Oh God, the smell. Medieval castles didn't exactly have great ventilation. That musty, damp odour is the stone walls, perpetually wet in England's climate. The sharp tang underneath, that's the chamber pot in the corner because you don't have a bathroom. Not even close. And despite what movies show you, medieval people didn't bathe often, especially not in winter. So there's also the unique funk of unwashed human that permeates everything. Morning, my lady. The voice startles you. Right, you're not alone. Your ladies in waiting sleep in the same room as you. Actually, one of them sleeps at the foot of your bed. She's been there all night, listening to you snore, watching you drool. Privacy, not a thing for medieval princesses. The woman who spoke, Alice is her name, is already up and moving around. She's stoking the fire that went out during the night, trying to bring some warmth back into the room. She's been awake for at least an hour already, because that's what servants do. They wake before you, sleep after you, and basically exist to make your life function. It's time for morning prayers, my lady, Alice says, helping you sit up. The household is gathering. This isn't optional. No matter how tired you are, no matter if you're sick, no matter what, morning prayers happen every single day. And as the princess, you need to be there. God comes first. Always. That's non-negotiable in medieval life. Alice helps you out of bed. The stone floor is like ice under your bare feet. In fact, the whole ritual of getting dressed is nothing like slipping into some comfy sweats and a t-shirt. Medieval royal clothing was designed to display wealth and status, not for comfort. First comes the linen shift, the only piece of clothing that gets washed with any regularity. Then the kirtle, a long-sleeved dress that laces up the sides or back. Next, a surcoat, an overdress with sometimes ridiculous sleeves that make it impossible to do anything practical without help. Your feet get stuffed into leather slippers that offer zero support and even less warmth. Arms up Alice instructs as she and another lady wrestle you into your clothing. This isn't your everyday outfit either. This is just for morning prayers. You'll change again after you eat, maybe again before midday meal, and definitely before supper if there are guests. Your hair gets a quick brushing, not a thorough one, because that takes too long and prayers wait for no one. Alice quickly braids it and tucks it up under a linen veil. No, not the tall, pointy hat from fairy tales. Those came later and were worn only in specific regions and times. You're wearing something more like a nun's wimple, a cloth that covers your hair, neck, and frames your face, because a woman's hair is considered too tempting, too sensual to be seen. It must be covered in public. "Hurry now," Alice urges, fastening a cloak around your shoulders. "Your father will be displeased if we're late." And that's something you absolutely want to avoid, because your father isn't just your dad. He's the king, or a powerful duke or earl. Either way, he controls literally everything about your life. Where you go, what you eat, what you wear, who you talk to, and most importantly, who you'll marry. Displeasing him isn't just about getting grounded. It could mean being sent away to a convent, or worse, married off to someone truly awful as punishment. So you hurry, following Alice through the winding stone corridors of the castle. They're barely warmer than your room, and just as dark. Servants are scurrying about with lit torches and rushlights, trying to bring some illumination to the gloom. The smell gets worse as you pass near the kitchens, a mix of smoke, unwashed bodies, and food that would turn your modern stomach. You reach the castle's chapel just as the bells are ringing. Everyone is already assembled. Your father at the front, of course, with your mother beside him if she's still alive. Childbirth kills a lot of medieval women. Your brothers, if you have any, are near your father. You and any sisters you have stand behind the men, because that's your place. Always behind the men. The chapel is cold too, but at least there are candles, dozens of them, casting a warm glow that almost makes the place feel cozy. Almost. You can still see your breath in the air. The priest begins the prayers in Latin. You understand some of it. You've heard these same prayers every day of your life, after all. But full comprehension isn't expected of you. You're a woman. Your job is to look pious, follow along with the responses, and set a good example for the household. Our Father, who art in heaven. The familiar words roll out in the priest's monotone. These prayers will go on for at least an hour, standing on the cold stone floor in your thin slippers. Your stomach is growling because you haven't eaten yet, but that doesn't matter. God first, always. I know what you're thinking. This sucks, right? Where's the glamour? Where are the handsome knights and the fancy tournaments? Well, that stuff exists, but it's not the day-to-day reality. The day-to-day is cold, boring, uncomfortable, and rigidly structured. Morning prayers finally end, and you're allowed to go to the hall for breakfast. But don't get excited. Medieval breakfast isn't pancakes and bacon. It's probably bread. Dense, coarse bread, nothing like our fluffy modern loaves, with maybe some ale, yes, even in the morning. Or watered wine if you're lucky, maybe some cheese if it's available, maybe an egg if the chickens are laying well. That's it. And you don't eat alone. The hall is full of people, soldiers, servants, clerks, visitors. Everyone eats together, with your family at the high table at the front of the room, elevated above everyone else. Privacy? Still not a thing. "My lady, your father wishes to speak with you after the meal," Alice whispers as she refills your cup with watered wine. Your stomach clenches, and not from hunger. When your father wants to speak with you, it's rarely good news. It usually means there's been a development in your marriage negotiations, because that's what you are to your family, a valuable political asset, a tool to forge alliances, secure peace treaties, or gain lands through marriage. Your personal feelings on the matter? Completely irrelevant. Do you know what it's about? You whisper back. Even though ladies aren't supposed to gossip at the table, Alice shakes her head. No, my lady, but there was a messenger from France last night. France. That could mean anything. An alliance with France would be prestigious, but it would mean leaving England, leaving everything and everyone you know, to go live in a foreign court where you don't speak the language, don't know the customs, and will be viewed with suspicion as a foreigner. The food in your mouth suddenly tastes like ashes. You're 13 years old, just 13. In your time, you'd be in middle school, worried about homework and friends and maybe your first crush. Here, you're already of marriageable age. Girls can be betrothed as infants, married at 12, the minimum age set by the church, and expected to start bearing children as soon as possible after that. Speaking of bearing children, that's your main purpose as a princess. Your education, limited as it is compared to your brothers, has been geared toward making you a good wife and mother. You've been taught to manage a household, basic medicinal skills, needlework, maybe some music, if your family values those accomplishments. Reading, possibly, though not all noble women were literate. Writing, less commonly. Languages, if you're expected to make a foreign match. You've also been taught since you were old enough to understand that your body doesn't belong to you. It belongs to your family until marriage, then to your husband after. Its purpose is to produce heirs, preferably male ones, and childbirth in the medieval period, it's basically a death sentence for many women. No modern medicine, no understanding of germs or infection, no pain relief beyond herbs and prayer. Women died in childbirth all the time, from bleeding, infection, exhaustion. Even queens and princesses with the best care available died regularly this way. And if you survived one birth, you were expected to go through it again, and again, as many times as it took to produce enough sons to secure the lineage. The meal ends, and your father motions for you to follow him to his private chamber. This is it. Whatever news came from France, you're about to hear it. And whatever it is, you have no say in the matter. Your life is not your own. As you walk behind your father through the corridors, you pass a window that looks out over the castle grounds. For just a moment, you catch a glimpse of two young squires practicing swordplay in the yard below. They're laughing, free in a way you'll never be. They get to learn fighting, strategy, horsemanship, all things forbidden to you because you're female. Their futures will be determined largely by their own abilities and choices. Yours was determined the moment you were born female and royal. The heavy wooden door to your father's chamber creaks open and you're ushered inside. Unlike your sparse sleeping chamber, this room shows the true wealth of your family. Tapestries line the walls, keeping out drafts while displaying hunting scenes and family crests. A fire roars in the hearth, making this the warmest room in the castle. Your father has a desk, an actual piece of furniture dedicated just to writing and business, covered with parchments, quills, and his personal seal. Daughter, he says, not bothering with your name. Medieval fathers, especially royal ones, weren't exactly the warm, fuzzy type. The King of France has proposed a match between you and his second son, Philip. And there it is, your future decided. You don't know this Philip, you've never met him. You don't know if he's kind or cruel, handsome or ugly, smart or stupid. None of that matters. What matters is that France is powerful, and this alliance would benefit your family politically. The terms are favourable, your father continues, as if discussing the sale of a horse rather than your entire life. Your dowry will include the Northern Territories, and in return we will receive trade rights through French ports. You're 13, you've never left England, you don't speak French, and now you're expected to leave everything behind, go to a foreign country, marry a stranger, sleep with him, bear his children, and run his household, all while being watched and judged by a court that sees you as an outsider. When? It's all you can manage to ask. When will your life as you know it end? The betrothal will be announced at Michaelmas. The wedding will take place next spring after you turn 14. Your father finally looks at you directly. This is a good match. Better than I hoped for. You will bring honor to our family. Translation: be grateful. Some girls get sold off to men 3 times their age. Some get sent to foreign courts even more distant and strange. Some get married to secure peace with enemies who hate them from the moment they arrive. By medieval royal standards, this is actually a decent arrangement. Yes, father, you say, because there's nothing else to say. No point in crying or begging. It won't change anything. This is your duty. This is what you were born for. As you leave your father's chamber, you realize that your life as you've known it, already restricted and controlled, now has an expiration date. You have less than a year left in your home, with the people you know, speaking the language you understand. After that, you belong to France, to Philip, to a life that's being thrust upon you without your consent. Alice is waiting outside the door. One look at your face tells her everything. France? She asks quietly. You nod. The second son? A small ray of hope in her voice. You nod again. Well, she says, trying to find something positive. At least he won't be king. Less pressure on you. Small comfort. Second sons still expect heirs, still have political responsibilities, still have complete control over their wives. But Alice is right about one thing. Not being queen consort does mean slightly less scrutiny, slightly lower stakes. Come, Alice says, guiding you back toward your chambers. It's time for your lessons. And so your day continues. You don't get to fall apart, don't get to process this life-changing news. There's no therapist to talk to, no understanding parent to comfort you. There's just the relentless schedule of a medieval princess's day. Prayers, meals, lessons, more prayers, more meals, maybe some supervised recreation if you're lucky, and then bed. The same tomorrow, and the next day. Until you're shipped off to France to begin your real purpose, making babies and securing alliances. This is the reality of being a medieval princess, not fairy tales, not romance, not freedom, just duty, restriction, and the constant looming knowledge that your body isn't your own. And this is just the morning of your day. The rest, even more controlled, even more focused on preparing you for the one thing that matters, being valuable marriage material. As you follow Alice back to your cold chamber, where you'll spend the next few hours practicing needlework or learning French, suddenly, very important, you catch yourself wondering what it would be like to be one of those squires instead, to hold a sword instead of a needle, to have choices instead of obligations. But those thoughts are dangerous. Better to accept your fate. Better to be the good, obedient daughter and future wife, because in medieval Europe, for a princess, that's the only way to survive, and survival, not happiness, is the best you can hope for. Alice leads you back to your chamber, where several other ladies are waiting. They're all from noble families, sent to serve you and learn the ways of court alongside you. They're not exactly friends. True friendship isn't really a concept that exists in the same way for medieval nobility. These girls are both your servants and your competition, watching your every move and reporting back to their families about the princess they serve. Lady Catherine will be here shortly for your French lessons, Alice says, helping you change into a simpler gown more suitable for sitting and studying. Your father says you'll need extra practice now. Of course he does. The clock is ticking on your transformation from English princess to French bride. Learning the language isn't just about communication, it's about survival. The chamber feels slightly warmer now that the morning fire has been burning for a while. Your ladies busy themselves around the room preparing your study materials. One of them, Margaret, who's about your age, looks at you with sympathy in her eyes. She knows what it means to be married off to a foreign court. Her sister was sent to Scotland last year and hasn't been heard from since. I hear the French court is very grand, Margaret offers, trying to be helpful, much more refined than ours. What she doesn't say, but you both know, is that the French will find every flaw in your manners, your speech, your appearance. You'll be judged mercilessly as the foreign bride, the outsider. No matter how well you prepare, it won't be enough. Lady Catherine arrives, and your heart sinks. She's a stern, thin-lipped woman who spent time in the French court in her youth and never lets anyone forget it. She carries a small wooden paddle that she uses to rap your knuckles when you mispronounce a word. By the end of most lessons, your fingers are red and swollen. "Bonjour, mademoiselle," she says sharply, not bothering with pleasantries in English. "Nous avons beaucoup à faire aujourd'hui." You stare at her blankly. You've been learning French for years. All noble children do, since it's the language of diplomacy, but you're nowhere near fluent, and now, suddenly, your entire future depends on how quickly you can master it. "She said we have much to do today," Margaret whispers, earning herself a glare from Lady Catherine. "En français," Lady Catherine snaps, pointing at you. "Répétez après moi. Je suis la princesse d'Angleterre." You try. God, you try. Je suis la princesse d'Angleterre. Whack, the paddle comes down on your knuckles. Pain shoots up your arm, but you don't cry out. Princesses don't show pain. Again, Lady Catherine demands, "Je suis la princesse d'Angleterre." And so it goes, for 2 excruciating hours. Your tongue twists around unfamiliar sounds. Your throat tightens with the effort of producing nasal vowels that don't exist in English. Your knuckles throb. By the end, you can barely make a fist. What they don't tell you in fairy tales is that medieval education, especially for girls, was often brutal. There was no concept of positive reinforcement, no gold stars for effort. There was only success or failure, and failure meant punishment. "Better," Lady Catherine finally says, though her face shows no satisfaction. "Tomorrow we will work on court etiquette. The French have different customs. You must not embarrass your family." As if you needed the reminder, as if the weight of your entire kingdom's diplomatic relations doesn't already rest on your adolescent shoulders. Lady Catherine leaves, and you flex your fingers, wincing. One of your ladies rushes forward with a small pot of salve made from herbs grown in the castle garden. This too is part of your education, learning which plants heal, which soothe, which poison. Medieval medical knowledge was primitive by our standards, but it was comprehensive in its own way, passed down from woman to woman across generations. "Time for your needlework, my lady," Alice announces, as another lady brings forward your embroidery frame. "This, at least, is something you're good at. All noble girls learn needlework from the time they can hold a needle. It's not just decorative, it's practical. In a world before mass production, everything must be made by hand. Queens and peasants alike spend hours every day with needle and thread, making and mending clothing, linens, tapestries. Your current project is a complex religious scene showing the Annunciation, the angel Gabriel telling Mary she'll bear the Son of God. The symbolism isn't lost on you. Like Mary, you have no choice but to accept the fate handed to you by men who claim to speak with authority. The work is detailed and demanding. You're using silk threads imported at great expense from the East, dyed in vibrant colours that cost more than what a peasant family might earn in a year. The gold thread you're using for the angel's halo is actual gold, pounded thin and wrapped around a silk core. Your family's wealth, literally woven into fabric. Smaller stitches, Alice reminds you, inspecting your work. A French lady would use stitches so small they can hardly be seen. You sigh and pull out the last row, starting again. Your back aches from hunching over the frame, your eyes strain in the dim light coming through the narrow window. Even on bright days, medieval castles are dark inside. Candles and oil lamps are expensive, so you work mostly by daylight, which means your productive hours are limited, especially in winter. Tell me about the French court, you say to Alice as you work. What should I expect? Alice purses her lips. It's more formal than here, more political. Everyone watching everyone else, looking for advantages, for weaknesses. Sounds awful, you mutter, pricking your finger for the third time. A drop of blood stains the white linen. You'll have to work it into the pattern somehow. It's survival, Alice corrects you. Court life is a battlefield without swords. Words are the weapons, alliances are the armour, and unlike men, women can't settle disputes with a duel. We must be cleverer, more patient. This, too, is part of your education, learning the unwritten rules of court life, how to read people's intentions behind their formal words, how to navigate the treacherous waters of noble politics, where a single misstep could mean disaster not just for you, but for your entire family. Will you come with me, you ask suddenly, to France? Alice's face softens. If your father permits it. Some of us will accompany you, though many of your ladies in France will be French, chosen by your husband's family to help you adjust. To spy on you, she means, to report your every word and deed back to your new family. To make sure your loyalties shift appropriately from England to France. The morning passes in silence after that, broken only by the soft sounds of needles through fabric and the occasional instruction from Alice. Your thoughts drift to what awaits you in France. Will your husband be kind? Will you be allowed to bring your favourite books? Will anyone there care about what you want, what you think, what you feel? You know the answer. No one cares now. Why would that change in France? Midday approaches, and it's time to change clothes again for the meal. This time you're dressed more formally, as there are visitors to the castle, minor nobles from nearby estates coming to pay respects to your father and, incidentally, to get a look at you, the princess who's made such an advantageous match. You're a curiosity now, a success story in the medieval marriage market. Your value has just increased significantly. The great hall is noisy and crowded when you enter. Trestle tables have been set up in rows, with your family's high table on a raised platform at the front. The stone floor is covered with fresh rushes mixed with herbs that release their scent when crushed underfoot, helping to mask the smells of so many people in one space. You take your place at the high table, careful to observe all the proper formalities, back straight, eyes modestly lowered, hands folded, silent unless spoken to, the perfect medieval lady, giving no one any reason to criticize. The meal is more elaborate than breakfast. Roasted meats, fish, bread, cheese, seasonal vegetables prepared with expensive spices. Wine flows freely. You eat little, your stomach still tight with anxiety about your future. Besides, it's not ladylike to show too much appetite. Medieval beauty standards for noble women prize daintiness, paleness, and delicacy. The one ethereal look that comes from never getting enough sun or food was considered attractive. The plump, rosy-cheeked ideal came much later. "My daughter," your father calls down the table, making you jump. "Lady Catherine tells me your French still needs work." You feel dozens of eyes turn to you. Heat rises in your cheeks. "Yes, father, I'm trying. Try harder," he says bluntly. "I won't have the French court laughing at English education." You nod, eyes lowered again, humiliation burning through you. Public criticism is just another tool in the medieval parenting arsenal. Shame as motivation, fear as incentive. "Perhaps the princess would benefit from a French lady-in-waiting," suggests one of the visiting nobles, "someone who could speak with her throughout the day." Your father considers this, then nods. "A practical suggestion. I'll arrange it." And just like that, another decision about your life is made without your input. Another stranger will be thrust into your intimate daily routine. Another person to judge you, to find you wanting. After the meal, you're allowed a brief period of recreation in the castle garden. It's one of the few times in your day when you're permitted outdoors, and even then, you're closely supervised. Medieval noble girls don't run, don't shout, don't climb trees, or play rough games like boys do. Your recreation consists of sedate walks along garden paths, perhaps some gentle ball games or dancing practice. The garden itself is nothing like our modern idea of ornamental gardens. It's primarily functional. Herbs for cooking and medicine, vegetables, fruit trees. Beauty is secondary to utility in medieval life. Tell me about Prince Philip, you say to Alice as you walk. What do you know of him? Alice hesitates. He's 17, she finally says. 4 years your senior. They say he's interested in scholarly pursuits. That could mean anything from a genuine intellectual to a weak boy unfit for military training. In a world where physical prowess is prized above all for men, being scholarly isn't necessarily a compliment. They say he's kind to his servants, Alice adds, as if sensing your disappointment. That's rare enough to be remarked upon. It's something. At least, kindness isn't a quality much valued in medieval nobility, especially in men. Power, strength, cunning. These are the traits that matter. If Philip is known for kindness, perhaps your life with him won't be completely miserable. Will I at least get to meet him before the wedding? You ask. Alice shakes her head. Unlikely. The marriage negotiations will be conducted by proxies. You'll probably meet him for the first time at the ceremony. Medieval royal marriages weren't about compatibility or love. They were business arrangements, political alliances sealed with vows and consummated with bodies. The idea that you should meet your spouse beforehand, let alone have anything in common with them, would have seemed absurd to medieval nobility. Your afternoon lessons begin after your brief garden respite. These focus on household management, the skills you'll need as the lady of a grand estate, because that's what a princess becomes after marriage, the manager of her husband's household, responsible for everything from provisioning the kitchens to overseeing the servants to maintaining the accounts. Brother Thomas, a monk from the nearby abbey who serves as the castle's clerk and accountant, arrives with his wax tablets and stylus. Today's lesson is on household expenditures, how to track what's spent, what's saved, what's wasted. A well-run household reflects God's order, Brother Thomas intones, his voice as dry as the parchment he carries. Wastefulness is a sin, carelessness is a sin, ignorance of your resources is a sin. Everything is a sin in medieval Christianity. The fear of hell permeates every aspect of life, every decision, every thought. It's the ultimate control mechanism in a world already rigidly controlled by social hierarchies. Brother Thomas sets a tablet before you, covered in neat rows of Roman numerals. Calculate the cost of provisioning the kitchen for 1 month based on these figures, he instructs. It's tedious, painstaking work. Arabic numerals exist but aren't widely used yet in Europe. Calculations that would take us seconds with modern math take you long, frustrating minutes. There are no shortcuts, no calculators, not even the simple convenience of positional notation that makes our base 10 system so efficient. Your head aches with the effort of converting measures and values. How many shillings to the pound? How many pence to the shilling? How many bushels of wheat to feed? How many people for how many days? The variables seem endless. You must know these things, Brother Thomas says sharply, when you make an error. A lady who cannot manage her household is at the mercy of dishonest stewards and thieving servants. He's right, of course. In the medieval world, numeracy is as important as literacy for a noble lady. You'll be responsible for managing vast estates, overseeing hundreds of servants and workers. If you can't keep track of resources, can't budget properly, can't detect when you're being cheated, your household will fall into disarray. And that reflects poorly not just on you, but on your husband. After mathematics comes music, another essential skill for a medieval lady, not because anyone cares about your personal fulfillment or creative expression, but because accomplishments like music making increase your value as a diplomatic asset. A princess who can entertain at court is more useful than one who can't. Sister Agnes from the convent arrives with a small harp. Unlike the massive concert harps we think of today, medieval harps were portable instruments that could be played while seated in a lady's chamber. "Your fingering has improved," Sister Agnes says, as you pluck carefully at the strings, producing a simple melody, "but your timing still falters in the middle section." Music in medieval Europe was primarily religious. Hymns, psalms, simple devotional pieces. Secular music existed too, of course, but it wasn't considered entirely proper for young noble ladies to sing the popular love songs of troubadours. Those came later when courtly love became fashionable. Your music lesson is cut short when your mother's messenger arrives. "The Queen requests your presence," the woman says with a curtsy. Your mother? The Queen? Even in your thoughts, you don't think of her informally. Medieval parent-child relationships, especially in royal families, weren't characterized by casual warmth. Respect, duty, and proper distance were the norm. You follow the messenger through the winding corridors to your mother's chambers, larger and more luxurious than your own, befitting her status. Inside, you find her surrounded by her ladies, all working on an enormous tapestry stretched on a frame that takes up half the room. "Daughter," she acknowledges you with a nod. "Come see what we're making for your wedding." The tapestry shows a symbolic joining of your family's crest with that of the French royal family. The workmanship is exquisite. Your mother is known throughout the kingdom for her skill with a needle. This tapestry will travel with you to France, a visual reminder of the political alliance your body is sealing. "It's beautiful," you say, because it is, despite what it represents. "Sit," your mother commands, indicating a stool near her. "Work on this section. The French court will judge your needlework harshly. You must not shame us." You take your place and begin stitching, adding tiny, precise stitches to the border pattern. Your mother watches critically, occasionally correcting your technique. This, too, is education, learning from the woman who's lived the life you're about to begin. A life of duty, obligation, and carefully concealed emotion. "I've heard about the French match," your mother says after a while, her voice low enough that only you can hear. "It's better than I hoped for. Prince Philip has a reputation for gentleness. Coming from your mother, this is practically gushing approval." You glance at her, surprised by this almost expression of concern for your welfare. "Will it hurt?" you ask, your voice barely audible. You both know what you're asking about: the wedding night, the consummation that will make the political alliance real and binding. Your mother's face remains impassive, her eyes on her needlework. "Yes," she says simply, "but it passes, and then it becomes tolerable in time. Tolerable, not pleasurable, not joyful, just tolerable." That's the best a medieval queen can offer her daughter by way of marital advice. "Remember your duty," she continues, still not looking at you. "Provide heirs, manage his household, bring honour to both families. The rest is unimportant. The rest being your happiness, your desires, your personhood, all unimportant in the grand scheme of medieval political marriage." "Yes, mother," you say, because there's nothing else to say. You work in silence after that, adding stitches to a tapestry that symbolizes your fate. The irony isn't lost on you. With every stitch, you're literally helping to create the artifact of your own subjugation. But that's the nature of being a medieval princess. You're both the commodity being traded and the craftsperson preparing yourself for market. As the afternoon wears on, you're summoned for yet another lesson, this one in religious instruction with Father Ambrose, the castle's chaplain. Religion wasn't just a Sunday activity in medieval Europe. It was woven into every moment of every day, especially for women who were considered morally weaker than men and thus in need of constant spiritual guidance. Father Ambrose is ancient, with rheumy eyes and gnarled hands that tremble slightly as he opens his prayer book. He's been instructing you since you were a small child, teaching you the catechism, the lives of the saints, the proper prayers for every occasion. Today, we will discuss the duties of a wife, he announces, making your heart sink. Even the church is preparing you for your new role. A wife must be obedient in all things, Father Ambrose begins, his voice reedy but firm. As the church submits to Christ, so must you submit to your husband. You've heard this countless times before. The Bible, interpreted through the lens of medieval Christianity, is very clear on a woman's place: subordinate, silent, submissive. A wife must be fruitful, he continues. Children are God's blessing, and to refuse them is a mortal sin. What he doesn't say, but what hangs in the air between you, is the danger that comes with this blessing. Childbirth kills countless women every year. Queens and peasants alike die bringing new life into the world. You've seen it happen. Ladies of the court who disappeared to their chambers for confinement and never emerged again. A wife must be modest, temperate, patient, and kind, Father Ambrose drones on. She must guard her tongue, her thoughts, and her actions, for she carries her husband's honour as well as her own. In other words, you have the responsibility without the authority, the blame without the power, the classic double bind of medieval womanhood. The lesson continues with example after example of virtuous wives from Scripture and the lives of saints, women who endured abuse, neglect, even torture without complaint, women who sacrificed everything for their husbands, their children, their faith, women whose only reward came after death. Is this what awaits you in France? A life of silent endurance, of hidden suffering, of swallowed words and buried feelings? By the time Father Ambrose finally closes his book, the sun is setting. Your day of education is nearly complete, but there's one final lesson before supper: dancing, because a princess who can't perform the complex court dances will be an embarrassment to her family and her husband. Master Henri, the dancing master brought from France specifically to teach you the latest court dances, waits in the great hall. He's thin and elegant, with a perpetual expression of barely concealed disdain for the English court he considers provincial and backward. "Mademoiselle," he greets you with a bow that somehow manages to be both proper and ironic. Today we practice the basse danse, very important at the French court, very elegant. You take your position back straight, chin up, arms positioned just so. The musicians, 3 men with lute, recorder and small drum, begin to play. The basse dance is slow and stately, a processional dance where the steps must be precise, the timing perfect, the overall effect one of controlled grace. It's harder than it looks. Medieval dancing isn't the free-form movement we think of today. It's rigidly choreographed, full of symbolic gestures and formal patterns. Every step, every turn, every hand position has meaning, and all of it must be performed while wearing heavy, restrictive clothing, maintaining perfect posture, and never, ever looking like you're exerting yourself. Non, non, non. Master Henri interrupts, clapping his hands sharply. The 3rd step is back, then left. You go left, then back. All wrong again. And so you begin again, and again, and again. Your feet ache in your thin slippers. Your back screams from the unnatural posture. Sweat trickles down your spine, making your gown stick uncomfortably to your skin. But you don't complain, you don't ask for a rest, you don't show any sign of fatigue or frustration, because princesses don't do that. They endure, they persist, they perfect themselves for the roles they're required to play. After what feels like hours, Master Henri finally pronounces your performance acceptable, barely, and dismisses you to prepare for the evening meal. You return to your chamber where your ladies help you change again into your formal evening attire. As Alice brushes your hair, now allowed to be worn loose for the evening since you're still unmarried, you catch a glimpse of yourself in the polished metal mirror on your dressing table. Not glass. Glass mirrors exist, but are incredibly rare and expensive. This reflection is dimmer, less defined, like looking at yourself through water. The face that looks back at you is young, so young, with traces of childhood still visible in the roundness of your cheeks, but your eyes look older, tired, resigned. This has been just one day in your education as a medieval princess, one day of countless identical days, all designed to shape you into something useful to your family and your future husband, not to prepare you for a fulfilling life of your own choosing. That concept doesn't exist, but to make you a valuable asset in the medieval political landscape. Tomorrow there will be more French lessons, more religious instruction, more household management training, the day after, the same, and the day after that, until spring comes and you're shipped off to France like a well-trained horse being delivered to its new owner. You turn away from the mirror as Alice fastens a gold circlet around your head, the visible symbol of your rank, the gilded cage of your privilege. "It's time for supper, my lady," she says softly. "Your father will be waiting." You nod and rise, arranging your features into the serene mask expected of a princess. Whatever you're feeling, fear, resentment, grief for the life you'll never have, must remain hidden. That, perhaps, is the most important lesson of your education. True feelings are a luxury medieval princesses cannot afford. You walk to the great hall for supper, flanked by your ladies. The corridors are busier now than earlier in the day, servants hurrying to and fro with platters and pitchers, guards changing shifts, visitors preparing to dine with your family. The castle is like a small town, with hundreds of people living and working within its walls, and you, as the princess, are at the centre of it all, watched, judged, discussed. The great hall blazes with light now, dozens of candles and torches illuminating the space for the evening meal. It's the brightest the castle gets, and the warmest, with so many bodies packed into the stone room. The smell is a mix of food, smoke, sweat, and the herbs crushed underfoot in the rushes on the floor. As you enter, a hush falls briefly over the closest tables. People nudge each other, whisper behind hands. There she is, the princess, the one going to France, the one making such a good match. You pretend not to notice, keeping your eyes modestly lowered as you make your way to the high table. Your father is already seated, deep in conversation with the most important visitor, a bishop from a neighbouring diocese, his purple robes marking his rank. Your mother sits at your father's left, silent but watchful, her eyes taking in everything. You take your place a few seats down, where you're expected to make conversation with the bishop's secretary, a thin, nervous man with ink-stained fingers. This, too, is part of your duty, entertaining guests, making them feel welcome, representing your family's hospitality. But there are rules, strict rules about what a princess can discuss. "I trust your journey was pleasant, sir?" You begin with the expected pleasantry. He nods, clearly uncomfortable at dining with royalty. "Yes, Your Highness, most pleasant." "And your work for the bishop? It must be fascinating." Another safe topic, a man's work. You can ask about it, express appropriate admiration, but never suggest you understand it or could do it yourself. The secretary relaxes slightly, launching into a description of manuscripts copied and letters written. You listen with practiced attention, making all the right noises of interest at all the right moments. This is a skill you've been developing since childhood, seeming engaged while your mind wanders elsewhere. Servants move around the hall, bringing platters of food to each table according to rank. The high table is served first, of course, and gets the best portions, the tenderest cuts of meat, the whitest bread, the richest sauces. Food in medieval Europe is as much about status as nourishment. The first course arrives, a soup of leeks and almond milk, served in shared bowls. Two people typically share each bowl, another reminder that privacy doesn't exist here. You're paired with the secretary, who looks terrified at the prospect of potentially touching spoons with a princess. "Please," you say, gesturing for him to begin. "Always defer to male guests." Another rule. The meal progresses through multiple courses: fish in a saffron sauce, roasted capon, a pie filled with spiced meat. Each dish is heavily seasoned, not just for flavour, but to demonstrate wealth. Pepper, cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg. These spices cost a fortune, imported along trade routes that stretch across the known world. You eat sparingly, as expected. A lady with too hearty an appetite is considered unrefined, possibly even sinful. Gluttony is, after all, one of the 7 deadly sins. Besides, the heavy, rich food sits uneasily in your stomach, still knotted with anxiety about your future. Your father stands, raising his cup in a toast to the bishop. Everyone falls silent, waiting for the king to speak. His words are formal, full of references to church and state, the bonds between secular and religious power. Politics, always politics, even at the dinner table. The bishop responds with equal formality, though you notice his eyes wandering occasionally to the serving girls moving between tables. Not all churchmen live up to their vows of chastity. It's an open secret at court, something everyone knows, but no one mentions directly. As the meal draws to a close, musicians begin to play from a gallery above the hall. Not the formal dance music you've been learning, but livelier tunes for entertainment. Your father signals to you, an almost imperceptible nod. This is your cue. Part of your duty as princess is to demonstrate your accomplishments to honoured guests. You rise and move to join the musicians, where a harp has been placed ready for you. All eyes turn to you as you sit, arranging your gown carefully, positioning your fingers on the strings. The hall quiets. This is a performance, a display of your family's culture and refinement through your skill. You begin to play, a religious piece that showcases both technical ability and proper piety. Your fingers move smoothly over the strings, producing clear, sweet notes that rise to the timbered ceiling. Years of practice, hours of repetition, countless corrections from tutors, all for moments like this when you serve as a living ornament to your father's court. When you finish, there's appreciative applause. The bishop nods his approval. Your father looks satisfied. Your mother's face shows nothing, but when you return to your seat, she touches your hand briefly, the closest thing to public praise you'll ever receive from her. The entertainment continues with professional musicians and a troupe of acrobats, a special treat for the bishop's visit. You watch with suitable appreciation, though these performers are regulars at court, and you've seen their acts many times before. As the evening wears on, your father stands, signalling the end of the formal meal. This is when the men will withdraw to discuss serious matters: politics, church business, warfare, while the women return to their chambers. The gender division is absolute in medieval court life. You rise with your mother and the other ladies, curtsying to your father and the bishop before withdrawing. The secretary looks almost relieved to see you go. Maintaining conversation with a princess was clearly stressful for him. But your day isn't over yet. As you return to your chambers, Alice informs you that a message has come from the steward. There's a matter requiring your attention in the kitchens. Now? You ask, surprised. It's unusual for such things to come up in the evening. The bishop's party brought additional mouths to feed, Alice explains. There's a question about tomorrow's provisions. This is a reminder of your other role, not just ornamental princess, but lady of the castle, responsible for the practical running of a huge household. Medieval noble women weren't just decorative. They were managers of complex domestic operations. You follow Alice down winding stairs to the kitchen area. Unlike the Great Hall, which at least makes a pretense of elegance, the working areas of a medieval castle are purely functional. The kitchens are hot, smoky spaces with massive hearths for cooking, tables for preparation, and storage areas for provisions. The kitchen staff bow or curtsy as you enter, depending on their gender. The head cook, a stout woman named Agnes with forearms like a blacksmith's from years of hauling pots, approaches with a worried expression. "Begging your pardon, my lady," she says, wiping her hands on her apron. "But with the bishop's men we're short on saltfish for tomorrow's meal, it being Friday and all." Friday. A fast day in the Christian calendar when meat is forbidden. Fish is the main alternative, and apparently the kitchen stores are running low. This is the kind of practical problem that falls to the lady of the castle, not important enough for the king to concern himself with, but essential to the smooth running of the household and the proper observation of religious customs. How many extra men came with the bishop, you ask, automatically falling into your role as household manager? 12, my lady, plus their horses needing feed. You think for a moment, mentally calculating the stores you know are available. This kind of inventory management is something you've been trained in since childhood, knowing exactly what resources the castle has, how long they'll last, when they need replenishing. "We have the salt herring in the north storeroom," you say. "It was meant for next week, but we can use that and send to the abbey tomorrow for more, and serve more bread and vegetable pottage to fill their bellies." Agnes nods, looking relieved. "Yes, my lady, wise thinking that is." This small moment of decision-making, this tiny exercise of authority, feels strangely satisfying in the grand scheme of your life as a medieval princess. Your choices are few and constrained, but in the domestic sphere you do have some power, some control. As you turn to leave, you notice a young scullery maid watching you with wide eyes. She can't be more than 9 or 10, her face smudged with ash from the hearth, her hands raw from work and water. She reminds you of yourself at that age, except her future holds only more of the same hard labour, while yours at least has the gilded cage of royalty. On an impulse, you smile at her. She looks startled, then shyly smiles back before ducking her head and scurrying back to her work. It's a tiny human connection across the vast gulf of medieval social hierarchy. A princess and a kitchen maid, both girls, both bound by the rigid expectations of their stations, neither with much say in her own destiny. You climb back up to the main level of the castle, Alice trailing behind you. The corridors are quieter now, the frenetic energy of the mealtime settling into the slower rhythm of evening. Guards stand at their posts, servants move more leisurely about their tasks, and the castle prepares for night. But your duties aren't quite done. Next comes a visit to the still room, the domain of the castle's herbalist, an older woman named Marjorie, who manages the preparation and storage of medicinal herbs, cosmetics, and household necessities like soap and candles. The The still room is one of your favourite places in the castle. It smells wonderful, a mix of dried herbs, honey, beeswax, and the various distillations Marjorie creates. It's also primarily a female space where women's knowledge of plants and healing is respected and valued. Marjorie curtsies as you enter, then immediately returns to her work of grinding dried herbs with a mortar and pestle. She's one of the few people in the castle who treats you with minimal ceremony, perhaps because she's old enough to have seen you born, perhaps because the practical nature of her work leaves little room for court formalities. "The lavender salve is ready," she says without preamble, "and I've prepared more of the rose water you like for washing." "Thank you," you say, genuinely grateful. The rose water is a small luxury in a life that, despite its privilege, has few personal comforts. "Sit," Marjorie instructs, nodding to a stool. "Let me see your hands." You obey, holding out your hands for inspection. Despite all the care taken to preserve a princess's beauty, your hands show the effects of constant needlework. Tiny pricks and calluses that no amount of salve can completely prevent. Marjorie tuts disapprovingly, taking a small pot from a shelf and beginning to apply a sweet-smelling ointment to your fingers. "French ladies wear gloves to keep their hands soft," she observes. "You should do the same. This is the kind of practical advice you value. Concrete suggestions for navigating court life offered without the crushing weight of moral instruction that accompanies most advice from your official tutors." "Will you show me how to make this before I go?" you ask, nodding to the salve. "So I can prepare it in France?" Marjorie smiles, pleased by your interest. "Of course, though they may have different herbs available there. We'll need to discuss alternatives." This exchange might seem insignificant, but it represents another small pocket of agency in your tightly controlled life. Learning practical skills, building knowledge that's yours alone, these are tiny rebellions against a system that values you primarily as a political token and a potential broodmare. Off to the still room, there's one more duty before you can retire for the night. Evening prayers in the chapel. Religion isn't just a set of beliefs in medieval Europe, it's the framework that structures time itself. Days begin and end with prayer. Weeks are marked by Sundays and feast days. Seasons by religious festivals. The chapel is dimmer now than it was for morning prayers, lit only by a few candles that cast long shadows across the stone walls. The space feels more intimate, more mysterious in this half-light. You kneel on the hard stone floor, ignoring the discomfort as you've been taught to do. Physical discomfort is considered good for the soul, a small taste of Christ's suffering, a reminder of human frailty. Father Ambrose leads the prayers, his voice echoing in the quiet space. Your father isn't present, he's still closeted with the bishop, but your mother kneels beside you, her lips moving silently with the familiar words. You wonder, not for the first time, what she truly thinks behind her impassive exterior. Was she once like you, a young princess sent to a foreign court, expected to adapt, to bear children, to represent her family's interests? Does she ever resent the constraints of her role? Or has she simply accepted them so completely that she no longer questions? These aren't questions you can ask. The gap between mother and daughter in medieval royal families isn't just generational, it's institutional. Queens and princesses have official roles to play, and emotional intimacy isn't part of the script. Evening prayers conclude, and at last your official duties for the day are done. You return to your chamber, where your ladies help you prepare for bed. The elaborate gown comes off, replaced by a simple linen shift for sleeping. Your hair is brushed and braided for the night. A warming pan filled with hot coals is passed between the sheets of your bed to take the worst chill off the linen. Outside, the castle settles into its nighttime routine. Guards change shifts, calling out to each other from the battlements. Servants bank fires to keep them burning slowly through the night. In the great hall, some of the household knights and squires prepare their pallets for sleeping. Dogs curl up near the kitchen hearths, waiting for morning scraps. The massive gates are checked and barred against the dangers of the world outside. This is the rhythm of castle life, the same patterns repeated day after day, the same duties performed in the same order, the same prayers said at the same hours. There's comfort in the familiarity, even as you know your place in this pattern will soon change dramatically. As you slip between the slightly warmed sheets of your bed, one of your ladies, Margaret, the one whose sister was sent to Scotland, sits nearby with a small candle ready to read aloud until you fall asleep. This is a luxury afforded to a princess, someone to ease your transition to sleep with words. "What shall I read tonight, my lady?" Margaret asks, holding up several options: a book of saints' lives, a collection of prayers, or a volume of more secular tales that somehow made its way into the castle library. The tales, you decide, feeling slightly rebellious. Stories of adventure and romance are considered somewhat frivolous for young ladies, potentially dangerous to moral character, but tonight you want to escape, at least in your mind, to worlds where things happen differently than in your tightly prescribed reality. Margaret begins to read, her voice soft in the dim chamber. The story tells of knights and quests, magical forests and mysterious castles. It bears little resemblance to the actual life of medieval nobility you experience daily, but that's precisely its appeal. Your other ladies settle onto their pallets on the floor, listening as they prepare for sleep. Alice sits mending by the dying fire, her needle flashing in the low light. The chamber grows quiet except for Margaret's voice and the occasional pop from the hearth. Outside, you can hear the night watch calling the hours. 10 o'clock and all's well. Their voices carry across the castle bailey, a reminder that even in darkness, the structures of medieval life continue. Someone is always watching, always guarding, always maintaining the boundaries that keep each person in their proper place. Your eyes grow heavy as Margaret reads on. The day's lessons and duties, anxieties and small triumphs blur together as sleep approaches. Tomorrow will bring more of the same. More French lessons, more religious instruction, more preparation for your role as a French prince's wife. But for now, in these quiet moments between waking and sleeping, you allow yourself to imagine alternatives. What if you weren't born a princess? What if you could choose your own path? What if the world were arranged differently, with girls valued for more than their marriage prospects and childbearing capacity? These are dangerous thoughts, bordering on the sinful. Father Ambrose would certainly assign penance if he knew you questioned the divine order that placed you in your privileged but constrained position. But in the privacy of your own mind, as you drift towards sleep, you permit yourself this small rebellion. Margaret's voice grows more distant as you slip toward dreams. The story she reads mingles with your own thoughts, creating impossible scenarios where princesses rescue themselves, choose their own husbands, or decide not to marry at all, where your value isn't determined by your family connections or your intact maidenhead or your potential to bear sons. In reality, your path is set. In a few months, you'll leave everything you know for a foreign court and a stranger's bed. You'll be expected to adapt, to represent English interests while becoming French in your loyalties, to produce heirs that strengthen the alliance between two sometimes hostile kingdoms. It's a heavy burden for young shoulders, this weight of international politics and dynastic ambitions, but it's the burden every medieval princess carries, has always carried, will continue to carry for generations to come. As sleep finally claims you, your last conscious thought is a question. In the future, will girls still be used as political pawns? Or will a time come when princesses, when all women, might determine their own destinies? History, if it could answer, would tell you that change comes slowly, painfully, incompletely, that centuries will pass before women gain even the most basic rights to their own lives, their own bodies, their own futures, that even in times far beyond your imagining, the struggle for true equality will continue. But tonight you sleep untroubled by such knowledge. Tomorrow brings another day of duties and lessons, preparations and obligations, another day of being a medieval princess, privileged, constrained and ultimately expendable in the great game of royal politics. The weeks pass in the same pattern of prayers, lessons and duties. Winter gradually loosens its grip on the castle, and the first tentative signs of spring appear. Snowdrops pushing through the frosty ground in the garden, slightly longer daylight hours, the occasional warmer day that offers a brief respite from the bone-deep cold. And with spring comes the accelerating preparations for your departure to France. You wake one morning to unusual activity in the castle. Servants hurry through the corridors with purpose, and there's a tension in the air that wasn't there the night before. What's happening? You ask Alice as she helps you dress. The French delegation has arrived early, she says, her hands moving quickly to fasten your gown. They're expected in the great hall within the hour. Your father has requested your presence. Your heart skips. The French delegation, the official party sent to finalize the marriage arrangements and escort you back to France. You knew they were coming, of course, but not so soon, not today, without warning. Is Prince Philip with them? You ask, trying to keep your voice steady. Alice shakes her head. No, my lady, just his representatives. The marriage will still be by proxy here. Of course, royal marriages often happened this way. A stand-in would represent your future husband at the ceremony here in England, and you wouldn't meet the actual prince until you arrived in France. It was more practical this way, given the dangers and delays of medieval travel, but it also meant you'd be officially married to a man you'd never even seen. You're dressed with unusual care this morning. Your best gown, dark blue wool trimmed with Miniver fur and embroidered with silver thread, a new linen veil, crisp and white, your mother's necklace borrowed for the occasion, silver set with small sapphires that match the gown. They must see you at your best, Alice murmurs as she adjusts the veil. You represent England today. No pressure, just the entire diplomatic relationship between two powerful kingdoms resting on the impression made by a 13-year-old girl. You're escorted to the Great Hall where the atmosphere is formal and tense. The English and French parties sit on opposite sides of the long table, eyeing each other with the cautious respect of old rivals. Your father sits at the head, projecting royal authority. Your mother beside him, her face a perfect mask of courtly dignity. And there, the empty seat waiting for you, not beside your parents, but halfway down the table, positioned directly opposite the leader of the French delegation, setting you apart, marking the transition of your allegiance from England to France. You take your place with as much grace as you can muster, eyes modestly lowered as you've been taught, but you can't help stealing glances at the man across from you, the one who represents your future husband and his family. He's older than you expected, with streaks of grey in his dark beard. Lord Bertrand de Montfort, you learn from the introductions, a cousin of the French royal family, trusted advisor to the king, and now your escort to your new life. Mademoiselle, he greets you in French, inclining his head. It is an honour to meet the future Princess of France. You respond in carefully practiced French, thankful for all those painful lessons with Lady Catherine. The honour is mine, my lord. I look forward to serving France and its royal family. Lord Bertrand looks pleasantly surprised at your command of his language. A small victory that sends a flush of pride through you, quickly tempered by the realization that you've just demonstrated your value as a political commodity. Like a horse being being assessed for purchase, you've shown a desirable quality. The meeting progresses with mind-numbing discussions of the marriage contract, dowry amounts, land transfers, trade agreements, military alliances, all the ways in which your body and what it represents will be leveraged for political advantage. You sit quietly, speaking only when directly addressed. This isn't a conversation you're meant to participate in, merely witness. After all, you're not a party to the negotiation. You're the object being negotiated over. And the marriage itself? Lord Bertrand asks, turning the conversation to practical matters. When shall it take place? Your father glances at you, then back to the Frenchman. 3 weeks hence. Time enough for proper preparations, but not so long as to delay the princess's journey to France unnecessarily. 3 weeks. Just 3 weeks left in the only home you've ever known. The knowledge settles like a stone in your stomach. Excellent. Lord Bertrand nods, and after the ceremony we shall depart immediately for Dover, weather permitting. No time to adjust, no gradual transition. One day you'll be an English princess in your father's castle, the next a French prince's wife on your way to a foreign court. The conversation shifts to your journey, the route, the accommodations, the size of your escort. It's a complex undertaking, transporting a royal bride across the Channel and through France. You'll travel with a substantial retinue, ladies in waiting, guards, servants, cooks, chaplains, even your own physician. A small moving court that represents both your status and the seriousness of the alliance being formed. And which of the princess's current household will accompany her permanently to France? Lord Bertrand asks, a question that makes you sit up straighter. Your father frowns slightly. She may bring 3 English ladies of her choosing, plus her personal maid. The rest of her household will be French, of course, as is proper. 3. Just 3 familiar faces to accompany you into your new life. The rest strangers, all watching you, judging you, reporting on you. Lord Bertrand nods, satisfied. Indeed, we have already selected suitable ladies from the finest French families to attend her. In fact, one such lady has accompanied our delegation to begin the princess's adjustment to French ways. The way he hesitates makes it clear. This French lady isn't just a companion. She's here to begin your transformation from English princess to French prince's wife, to smooth out your English habits, correct your French pronunciation, ensure you won't embarrass yourself or your new family when you arrive at the French court. Lady Isabelle de Brienne, Lord Bertrand continues, gesturing to a woman seated further down the French side of the table, a cousin of Prince Philip's mother and experienced in the ways of the French court. You look at Lady Isabel, trying not to stare. She's perhaps 30, elegantly dressed in the French fashion, which is noticeably different from English styles. Her headdress is more elaborate, her sleeves more tightly fitted, her colours more vibrant. She meets your gaze briefly and offers a small, reserved smile, assessing you just as you're assessing her. The meeting concludes with agreements made, documents signed and hands shaken. The alliance is formalised, your fate is sealed. In 3 weeks you'll be married by proxy to Prince Philip of France, and shortly thereafter you'll leave England, possibly forever. As you rise to leave the hall, your father calls you to his side. You will spend the afternoon with Lady Isabel, he instructs. Begin learning what will be expected of you at the French court. Not a request, an order. You curtsy in acknowledgement and turn to find Lady Isabel waiting for you. "Shall we walk in the garden, Princess?" she suggests in French, her accent much more refined than your tutor's. The weather is finally clement enough for it. You nod, not trusting yourself to speak. The garden. A small reprieve. At least you won't be immediately closeted in a chamber with this stranger, this harbinger of your new life. The castle garden is showing the first real signs of spring. Tender green shoots pushing up through the soil, a few early flowers braving the still cool air. Lady Isabel walks beside you, her movements graceful and measured. Your own ladies follow at a discreet distance, giving you privacy to speak but remaining within sight as propriety demands. You must have many questions, Lady Isabel says after a moment of silence. About France, about the court, about Prince Philip. So many questions they tangle in your throat, making it impossible to voice any of them, but one pushes its way forward. Is he kind, you ask simply? Lady Isabel's expression softens slightly. Prince Philip is thoughtful, scholarly, as you may have heard, not given to the hunts and tournaments his elder brother favours. She pauses, choosing her words carefully. He will not be cruel to you, Princess, that much I can promise. Not exactly a ringing endorsement of his character, but better than the alternative. You've heard enough stories of princesses married to monsters to know how much worse your situation could be. The French court is more formal than what you're accustomed to, Lady Isabel continues, shifting to practical matters. More political. Every gesture, every word carries meaning. You will be watched constantly, judged by standards you don't yet understand. "Oh, sounds terrible," you murmur before you can stop yourself. To your surprise, Lady Isabel laughs, a genuine sound that transforms her composed face. It is, rather, but it's also magnificent. The music, the art, the conversations, there's nothing like it in Europe, and as a princess, you'll have access to all of it. She stops beside a stone bench and sits, gesturing for you to join her. "May I speak plainly, Princess?" You nod, curious despite your apprehension. "Your position will be difficult at first," she says, her voice lower now. "You are young, foreign, untested. There will be those at court who wish to see you fail, particularly the mothers and sisters of girls who might have married Prince Philip instead." The bluntness is startling, but oddly refreshing after months of platitudes and religious instruction about wifely duties. "But," Lady Isabel continues, "you have advantages. Your youth means you can adapt more easily. Your beauty will win some to your side. And most importantly, you are intelligent. I can see that clearly. You blink, unused to being complimented for your mind rather than your appearance or your piety." "Use that intelligence," Lady Isabel advises. "Watch before you speak. Learn who holds real power, not just official titles. Find allies, and most importantly, give France an heir as quickly as possible. Nothing will secure your position more effectively. There it is, again, the reduction of your value to your womb and what it can produce." Even this relatively forthright conversation circles back to the fundamental purpose of a princess, producing the next generation of royalty. "How did you know," you ask suddenly, "how to navigate the court, I mean?" Lady Isabel's eyes grow distant. "I learned as you will, through necessity, through mistakes, through humiliations. I still remember clearly." She refocuses on you, "but I can help you avoid the worst of them, if you'll trust me." It's the first time anyone has offered actual practical help rather than vague religious platitudes about being a good wife. Despite yourself, you feel a small flicker of gratitude toward this French lady who doesn't sugarcoat the challenges ahead. "Now," Lady Isabel says, standing and resuming her more formal demeanour, "let us discuss the French court fashions. Your current wardrobe, while fine for England, will need significant additions before you are presented to the king." And so begins your French education in earnest. No longer theoretical lessons about a someday future, but specific practical preparation for a reality that's now just weeks away. The next 3 weeks pass in a blur of activity. The castle is transformed from its usual functioning state to a hive of wedding preparations. New tapestries are hung in the Great Hall, provisions are ordered in enormous quantities, guests begin to arrive, nobles from across the kingdom coming to witness the proxy marriage of a princess. Your own transformation is equally intense. New gowns are made in the French style under Lady Isabel's exacting supervision. Your French lessons increase to 3 hours daily. You're taught new court dances, new table manners, new ways of walking and sitting and speaking. Back straighter, Lady Isabel instructs, tapping between your shoulder blades as you practice processing across the chamber. Eyes level, not down as you've been taught here. A French princess shows more confidence. It's exhausting, this constant correction, this reshaping of habits formed over your entire life, but there's no time for rest, no space for complaint. The date approaches relentlessly, and you must be ready. One afternoon, as your ladies are fitting you for your wedding gown, your mother makes a rare appearance in your chamber. Everyone immediately curtsies, then resumes their work as she observes silently from the doorway. After several minutes, she dismisses them all with a gesture. Even Lady Isabel, who looks surprised but complies. Suddenly, you're alone with your mother, something that almost never happens. "Come," she says, moving to sit by the window where the light is better. "Let me look at you." You approach cautiously, uncertain what this unusual audience means. Your mother examines you with a critical eye, taking in the half-finished French-style gown, the new way you hold yourself under Lady Isabel's tutelage. "You look well," she finally says. "The French style suits you." From your mother, this is lavish praise. You murmur a thank you, still wondering why she's here. "I have something for you," she continues, opening a small pouch at her belt and withdrawing an object wrapped in silk. "This has been passed from mother to daughter in my family for generations." She unwraps the silk to reveal a ring, gold, set with a small but perfect ruby, not ostentatiously valuable like the jewels you'll receive as wedding gifts, but clearly ancient, worn smooth by centuries of women's fingers. "My mother gave it to me when I left Spain to marry your father," she says, her voice softer than you've ever heard it. "I wore it always under my gloves where no one could see it, a reminder of who I was before I became England's queen." She takes your hand and slides the ring onto your finger. It fits perfectly, as if it were made for you. "Your loyalty must be to France now, to your husband and the children you will bear him," she continues, her voice returning to its usual measured tone. "But this is to remind you that you came from somewhere, that you carry the blood of kings and queens before this marriage." You stare at the ring, then at your mother's face, seeing, perhaps for the first time, the young Spanish princess she once was. How frightened she must have been, coming to a strange country to marry a strange man. How alone she must have felt. "Thank you," you whisper, and, on impulse, you lean forward and kiss her cheek, something you haven't done since early childhood. She stiffens slightly in surprise, then places a hand briefly against your hair. "Be brave," she says simply, and then she's gone, leaving you with the ring and a new understanding of the woman who has always seemed so remote, so perfectly moulded to her role as queen. That night, lying in bed, you twist the ring on your finger and think about the generations of women who wore it before you, all facing the same fate, all sent away from home to marry men they didn't know, all expected to build new loyalties while somehow preserving something of themselves. Did they find happiness eventually? Did they grow to love their husbands, their new countries? Or did they simply endure, doing their duty year after year until death finally released them? There are no diaries to tell you, no intimate conversations where royal women shared their true feelings. The inner lives of medieval princesses and queens remain largely invisible to history, glimpsed only through official records and the occasional personal item passed down, like this ring. The wedding day arrives with the inevitability of the tide. You're awakened before dawn, not by Alice as usual, but by your mother's ladies. Today is different. Today everything changes. The ritual of dressing takes hours. First a bath, a rare luxury, especially in the colder months, scented with herbs and flower petals. Then layer upon layer of clothing, each more elaborate than the last. The linen shift, the silk underdress, the wedding gown itself, cream-coloured silk, embroidered with gold thread and seed pearls, its sleeves lined with Miniver fur, its train so long it requires 2 girls to carry it. Your hair is washed and dried before the fire, then arranged in elaborate braids wrapped around your head like a crown. Unlike a normal day, it's left partially visible, a symbol of your unmarried state that will change during the ceremony when your head is fully veiled to indicate your new status as a wife. Through it all, you remain oddly calm. Not happy, not excited as a bride in romantic stories might be, but not panicking either. There's a strange freedom in having no choice, in knowing that your path is absolutely fixed and nothing you feel or think can alter it. The great hall has been transformed. Fresh rushes mixed with wildflowers cover the floor. New tapestries depicting scenes from the lives of married saints hang on the walls. Candles by the hundreds illuminate the space, their light reflected in silver and gold plate, displayed prominently to demonstrate your family's wealth. Guests fill every available space. English nobles in their finest attire, the French delegation in even more elaborate garments, all watching as you enter on your father's arm. The music, harps, recorders, small drums shifts to a stately processional as you walk slowly toward the makeshift altar at the far end of the hall. And there waits your husband, not Prince Philip, who remains in France, but his proxy, Lord Bertrand, standing stiffly in formal attire. Beside him, looking incongruously pleased, is Father Ambrose, who will perform the ceremony. The wedding itself passes in a blur of Latin phrases and symbolic gestures. You speak your responses by rote, having rehearsed them countless times. You extend your hand when prompted, feel the weight of the ring as Lord Bertrand slides it onto your finger on behalf of the absent prince. And just like that, you are married. Not in body, the marriage won't be consummated until you reach France and meet your actual husband, but in law, in politics, in the eyes of the church and both kingdoms. There's a feast afterward, more elaborate than any you've experienced before. Course after course of expensive delicacies, wines from the finest vineyards, subtleties, elaborate sugar sculptures shaped like the joined coats of arms of England and France. You sit in the place of honour, now officially a French princess rather than an English one. Lord Bertrand, having completed his proxy duty, has returned to his place with the French delegation. The seat beside you remains conspicuously empty, a reminder of your husband's absence, of the strange limbo you now inhabit as a married virgin, a wife without a husband. Throughout the meal you receive gifts, gold cups from a duke, a reliquary containing what is claimed to be a splinter from the true cross, illuminated prayer books, jewels to adorn your person and your future home in France. Each gift giver approaches, bows or curtsies, presents their offering with formal phrases of congratulation. You respond with equally formal thanks, your French now fluent enough after Lady Isabel's intensive training that even the French delegation looks impressed. It's all performance, a diplomatic spectacle with you at its centre. Nothing about this day is for you. It's for the alliance, for the kingdoms, for the future heirs you'll produce. Your feelings are irrelevant to everyone present, except perhaps to Alice, who stands behind your chair, occasionally leaning forward to whisper practical advice. Small sips only. It's strong wine. The fish has bones. Be careful. Lord Edwin is watching for a reaction to his gift. Look pleased. These small kindnesses, these moments of genuine concern for your comfort and success are like droplets of water in a desert. They remind you that beneath the pageantry and politics, there are still human connections that matter. As the feast stretches into the evening, musicians play and acrobats perform. Under normal circumstances, a wedding night would follow, the bride and groom escorted to their chamber by ribald guests, the marriage consummated and verified. But your situation is different. Your real wedding night awaits you in France with a man you've still never met. Instead, as the festivities begin to wind down, Lady Isabel appears at your side. "We should retire, Princess," she says quietly. "Tomorrow will be an early start." Tomorrow. The journey begins. You nod and rise, making your formal farewells to the assembled guests. Your father kisses your forehead, a rare public display of affection. Your mother embraces you briefly, and then you're being escorted back to your chamber, surrounded by your ladies, for your last night in the only home you've ever known. The chamber looks different. Your personal belongings have been packed in trunks that line the walls, ready for tomorrow's departure. The room feels emptier, echoing slightly as you move through it. Your ladies help you out of the elaborate wedding gown, carefully folding it to be packed. It's unlikely you'll ever wear it again. It served its ceremonial purpose today. In France, you'll have new gowns made to the latest French fashions, designed to impress your new court. Dressed in your sleeping shift, you dismiss most of your ladies, keeping only Alice to help you prepare for bed. As she brushes your hair, now loose again after the elaborate wedding style, you find yourself studying her familiar face in the polished metal mirror. You'll come with me to France?" you ask, needing to hear it confirmed yet again. Alice nods, meeting your eyes in the reflection. "Of course, my lady. I've already packed my things." And Margaret, your young lady in waiting who shared stories with you, yes, she's coming too, and Lady Eleanor and Lady Catherine. Alice names the other two English ladies who will form the small core of familiar faces in your new French household. It's not much. Just 4 English women among the dozens of French attendants who will surround you at the French court. But it's something, a small piece of home to take with you. "Are you afraid?" you ask Alice suddenly, "of going to France?" Alice's hands pause briefly in their rhythmic brushing. "Yes," she admits quietly, "but also curious. It's a grand adventure, in its way. An adventure. You hadn't thought of it like that. To you, it's been an ending, the end of childhood, the end of familiarity, the end of whatever small freedoms you enjoyed as a daughter rather than a wife. But perhaps Alice is right. Perhaps there's something to be gained in this enforced journey, this new beginning." "What do you think he's like?" you ask, not needing to specify who you mean. "Really like, I mean, not what Lady Isabel says." Alice considers carefully before answering. "I think he's probably as nervous as you are. He didn't choose this match any more than you did." It's a startling thought. Somehow you've been imagining Prince Philip as a fully formed adult, confidently waiting for his bride to be delivered. But Alice is right. He's only 17, hardly more than a boy himself, also bound by duty and family expectations. "Maybe he's nice," you say, sounding young even to your own ears. "Maybe we'll get along." Alice smiles gently. "Maybe you will. And if not, well, royal couples often lead separate lives once heirs are secured. You'll have your own household, your own interests. It's cold comfort, but realistic. Medieval royal marriages aren't about companionship or love. They're about alliances and heirs. If you're lucky enough to find friendship with your husband, that's a bonus, not an expectation. Alice finishes brushing your hair and helps you into bed. The sheets are cold despite the warming pan, and you curl up tightly, trying to preserve body heat. "Would you like me to read to you?" Alice asks, reaching for the book of tales that's become your nightly ritual. You nod, suddenly unable to speak past the lump in your throat. This familiar comfort, Alice's voice, stories of adventure and magic, is something you can take with you to France, a small continuity in the massive disruption of your life. As Alice reads, you close your eyes and try to imagine what awaits you across the channel. A new castle, a new court, a husband with a scholar's mind, and, if Lady Isabel is to be believed, a gentle disposition. Perhaps it won't be as terrible as your worst fears suggest. Or perhaps it will be worse in ways you haven't even considered. The uncertainty hangs over you like a cloud as you drift towards sleep, listening to Alice's voice telling stories of knights and ladies, quests and discoveries, endings both happy and sad. Tomorrow brings the beginning of your own quest, not one you chose, but one you must undertake nonetheless. And as consciousness fades, you find yourself hoping, against all medieval reality, for something like a happy ending of your own. Dawn breaks cold and misty on your departure day. You've barely slept, drifting in and out of anxious dreams where you're lost in labyrinthine French castles, unable to understand the words spoken around you. Alice gently shakes you awake before the bells for morning prayers. "It's time, my lady," she says softly. You rise without protest. The familiar routines of dressing have a final bittersweet quality this morning. The same linen shift, the same woolen kirtle, the same veil covering your hair. But today these English garments wrap you for a journey from which you may never return. The castle courtyard is chaotic with preparations. Horses stamp impatiently, their breath forming clouds in the chill morning air. Carts are being loaded with your possessions, clothing, books, personal items deemed suitable to accompany a princess to her new home. Men-at-arms, in your father's livery, check weapons and saddle straps, preparing to escort you as far as Dover. Your mother and father await near the gate. Your father looks impatient, eager to have the leave-taking over with. Political business concluded, alliance secured. Your mother's face is impassive as always, but you notice her fingers worrying at the edge of her sleeve, a rare sign of emotion. The goodbyes are formal, restrained. Your father kisses your forehead, reminding you of your duty to represent England well at the French court. Your mother embraces you briefly, whispering, "Remember who you are," before stepping back. No tears, no dramatic scenes. Medieval royalty doesn't indulge in public displays of emotion, even at moments of permanent separation. Lord Bertrand, who will escort you to France, bows deeply. "We must depart, Princess. The tide waits for no one, not even royalty." And just like that, it's time. You mount the palfrey chosen for your journey, a gentle mare with an easy gait, selected for comfort during the long ride to Dover. Alice and your other English ladies are similarly mounted nearby, their faces a mixture of anxiety and excitement. "Ready, my lady?" Lady Isabel asks, bringing her own horse alongside yours. She'll be your guide in this journey, your connection to the French court you're entering. You nod, not trusting your voice. The castle gates open. The procession moves forward. You resist the urge to look back at the only home you've ever known, focusing instead on the road ahead. This is your life now. Forward motion, away from everything familiar, toward a future you can barely imagine. The journey to Dover takes 3 days. Medieval travel is slow, uncomfortable, and potentially dangerous. The roads, little more than rutted dirt tracks, are muddy from spring rains. Your escort keeps a watchful eye for bandits, though the size and obvious wealth of your party actually makes attack less likely. Only the most desperate outlaws would risk assaulting a princess's procession. You sleep in abbeys along the way, the safest, cleanest accommodations available. Still, clean is a relative term in medieval Europe. The straw mattresses provided for you almost certainly harbour fleas and other tiny residents. The food is plain but plentiful, offered with appropriate deference to your rank. Try to rest well tonight, Lady Isabel advises as you reach the abbey where you'll spend your final night on English soil. The Channel crossing can be challenging. You've never seen the sea before, having spent your entire life inland at your father's primary castle. The prospect of crossing the narrow but notoriously rough stretch of water between England and France fills you with dread. You've heard stories of ships lost, of even the strongest men rendered helplessly ill by the motion. That night, you barely sleep again. The unfamiliar abbey with its stone walls and echoing corridors feels hostile, transitional, neither home nor destination, just a waypoint in your journey. Alice sleeps on a pallet near your bed, her breathing the only familiar comfort in this strange place. Morning comes too quickly. A brief meal, another change of clothes, into a warmer travelling outfit for the sea crossing, and then the procession is moving again, down to the harbour at Dover, where your ship waits. The smell hits you first. Salt air mixed with fish, tar, rope, and the indefinable stench of a medieval port town where sewage runs directly into the harbour. Then the noise, sailors shouting, gulls screaming, the constant creaking of ships against their moorings. And, finally, the sight. The vast expanse of grey-green water stretching to the horizon, choppy with whitecaps under a threatening sky. That's our vessel. Lord Bertrand points to a ship larger than the fishing boats, but tiny compared to the expanse of water it must cross. The Sainte Marie, one of the best in the royal fleet. It doesn't look particularly reassuring. Wooden, open to the elements except for a small cabin at the rear, dependent entirely on wind and human muscle to make the crossing. Medieval seafaring is primitive, dangerous, and terrifyingly subject to the whims of weather. "Come, Princess," Lady Isabel says, taking your arm. "Best to board quickly and be settled before the tide turns." Boarding involves being half carried by sailors down slippery steps to a small boat, then rowed out to where the Sainte Marie is anchored. The little boat bobs alarmingly on the waves, water occasionally splashing over the sides, soaking the hem of your gown. By the time you reach the ship, you're already cold, damp, and feeling distinctly unwell. The cabin assigned to you is barely large enough for a narrow bed, really just a shelf with a thin mattress, and a small chest for immediate necessities. Alice and Lady Isabel will share the space with you. Your other ladies must make do with sheltered spots on deck, huddled under cloaks and blankets. The crossing usually takes about half a day with favourable winds, Lady Isabel explains, helping you settle on the bed. Try to sleep if you can. It's easier that way. Sleep proves impossible as the ship leaves the relative shelter of the harbour and encounters the full force of the channel. The vessel pitches and rolls, creaking ominously with each wave. The small cabin reeks of tar and salt and the previous passenger's sickness. Within an hour, you're violently ill, as are most of the women in your party. Alice holds your hair back as you retch miserably into a bucket, too sick to feel embarrassed. Lady Isabel, surprisingly, seems unaffected. "I've made this crossing many times," she explains, handing you a cloth dampened with vinegar to wipe your face. "One gets accustomed to it." You can't imagine ever becoming accustomed to this misery. Medieval medicine offers little help for seasickness, just peppermint oil, which you can't keep down anyway, and the dubious comfort of knowing that the journey must eventually end. The crossing takes longer than expected. A storm blows up midway, forcing the captain to adjust course. What should have been half a day stretches into a full day and night of pitching, rolling agony. You slip in and out of consciousness, aware only of the constant motion. The sounds of timbers groaning and sailors shouting instructions above the wind. You find yourself praying, not the formal rote prayers taught by Father Ambrose, but desperate personal pleas for survival. Medieval sea travel kills countless people every year. Ships sink without warning. Bodies are never recovered. You could disappear beneath these grey waves, and the political machinery would simply adjust. Another princess would be found for Prince Philip. Another alliance would be made. But finally, mercifully, the motion changes. The ship steadies somewhat. Voices outside the cabin sound more confident, less urgent. "We're approaching Calais," Lady Isabel announces, opening the cabin door to let in a blast of salt air. "Come, Princess, you should be seen on deck as we arrive." It's the last thing you want. You're pale, unwashed, your hair tangled by salt spray, your clothes stained with sickness. But once again, duty trumps personal comfort. You allow Alice to help you into a clean gown, difficult in the confined space, and do what she can with your hair before joining Lady Isabel on deck. The French coastline is visible now, a smudge of grey-green on the horizon that gradually resolves into definite land. Calais harbour comes into view, smaller than Dover but busier, with more ships and an impressive stone fortress guarding the approach. "That's the Château de Calais," Lady Isabel explains, "built by the Count of Boulogne to protect the harbour. We'll stay there tonight before continuing to Paris." Paris, the French royal court, Prince Philip, your future. It all becomes suddenly terrifyingly real as the ship manoeuvres into the harbour. This is France. You're no longer under your father's protection, no longer in a land where you speak the primary language, no longer just a princess in waiting. Now you're a wife, a diplomat, a living symbol of alliance between sometimes hostile kingdoms. The welcoming party waiting at the dock is impressive. Local nobles, church officials, a contingent of royal guards in the French king's livery. Banners flutter in the brisk wind, horses stamp impatiently. It's a show of respect for your rank, but also a demonstration of French wealth and power. You're half carried off the ship, still weak from the journey. A litter awaits to transport you to the chateau, a courtesy that makes you pathetically grateful. You don't think your legs would support you for the walk. The Château de Calais is smaller than your father's castle, but more ornate, with elaborate stone carvings decorating its facade. Inside, you're escorted to chambers prepared for your arrival, surprisingly comfortable, with fresh rushes on the floor, a fire already burning in the hearth, and a tub of steaming water waiting. "A bath, thank God," Alice murmurs, already helping you out of your travel-stained clothes. It's a luxury you desperately need after the crossing. Medieval hygiene is minimal at the best of times, and travel makes it worse. The hot water, scented with lavender and rosemary, is heaven against your salt-chafed skin. Alice washes your hair, working out the tangles with patient fingers. Clean, dressed in fresh clothes and fed a light meal of bread and broth, all your stomach can handle after the seasickness. You feel almost human again, but there's no time to truly rest. Barely an hour after your arrival, Lady Isabel informs you that the local nobility await an audience. They've come to pay respects to the new Princess of France, she explains, already selecting appropriate jewellery to complement your gown. It's expected. So, you put on the mask of royalty once more, back straight, head high, expression pleasant but dignified. You enter the chateau's great hall and take your seat in the chair of honour, receiving the bows and curtsies of French nobles whose names you immediately forget in your exhaustion. You speak the formal French phrases Lady Isabel taught you, accepting their welcome, expressing appropriate gratitude for their hospitality. Your accent betrays you as English, of course, but your grammar is correct, your vocabulary appropriate. Small victories. After what feels like hours, but is probably only one, Lady Isabel finally escorts you back to your chambers. "You did well," she says, with what sounds like genuine approval. "But rest now. The journey to Paris begins tomorrow, and it's much longer than the one from London to Dover." She's not exaggerating. The journey from Calais to Paris takes over a week, travelling through countryside that grows progressively more spring-like as you move south. Unlike in England, where you slept in abbeys, here your party stops at the castles of various nobles along the route. Each night brings another formal welcome, another feast you must attend despite your exhaustion, another round of memorising French names and titles. The travel itself is grueling. Medieval roads are rough at best, impassable at worst. Spring rains have left many sections muddy and rutted. Your litter, carried by 4 strong men who rotate with others throughout the day, jolts and sways uncomfortably. By the 3rd day, your back aches constantly. By the 5th, you've developed sores where your body presses against the wooden frame despite the cushions. "We're making good time," Lord Bertrand assures you during one rest stop, as if that's any comfort. "We should reach Paris in 3 more days, weather permitting." The weather doesn't permit. A spring storm hits, bringing driving rain that turns the road to mud and forces your party to seek shelter at a manor house, smaller than planned. Accommodations are cramped. You share a bed with Alice and Lady Isabel, all 3 of you still in your damp clothes because there's no privacy to change. "At least it's warm," Alice whispers in English, trying to find something positive in the situation. It is warm, surprisingly so. The shared body heat under the woolen blankets creates a cocoon of comfort that reminds you of childhood, of times when illness or cold would prompt your nurses to sleep beside you. There's an intimacy to it that feels alien after years of increasing separation and formality as you grew into your role as princess. Lady Isabel, overhearing the English comment, surprises you by responding in the same language. "The French countryside has its charms even in bad weather," she says, "though I admit I prefer the comforts of Paris." "You speak English?" you ask, startled. In all your weeks together, she's insisted on French. Lady Isabel smiles in the darkness. "Of course. How else would I understand what you and your ladies whisper when you think I can't comprehend? But don't tell the others. It's a useful advantage." You laugh despite yourself, a genuine laugh, possibly the first since leaving England. There's something reassuring about discovering that Lady Isabel, strict taskmaster and the embodiment of French court expectations, has a touch of the conspirator about her. The storm passes. The journey resumes, and finally, after what feels like months but has been less than 2 weeks, the spires of Paris appear on the horizon. Notre Dame, Lady Isabel points out the massive cathedral rising above the city walls, and there, the palace, your new home. The French royal palace is nothing like your father's primary castle. Where the English fortress is solidly defensive, built to withstand attacks, the French palace is designed to impress, to display wealth and sophistication. Its walls are still formidable, but decorated with carvings and statues. Its windows are larger, many fitted with actual glass rather than shutters and oiled parchment. As your procession approaches the city gates, you're met by a larger, more elaborate welcoming party. Royal guards in full ceremonial armour, nobles in their finest clothes, church officials in rich vestments, musicians playing fanfares on silver trumpets. And at the centre of it all, a young man on a magnificent white horse, dressed in blue and gold, the French royal colours. Prince Philip, Lady Isabel confirms quietly, your husband. Your heart hammers painfully against your ribs. This is the moment you've been both dreading and curiously anticipating. Your first glimpse of the man you're already married to, the stranger who will share your bed, your life, possibly your entire future. He's not what you expected. Taller than you imagined, but slender, almost delicate in build, pale, with features that might be called pretty rather than handsome. His hair is light brown, falling in soft waves to his shoulders in the current French fashion. No beard, a contrast to the heavily bearded English nobles you're accustomed to. As your litter is lowered to the ground, Prince Philip dismounts and approaches. You struggle to stand on legs weakened by days of travel, determined to meet your husband for the first time with as much dignity as possible. He stops before you and bows, lower than strictly necessary given his rank. When he straightens, you see his eyes properly for the first time. Blue-grey, intelligent, evaluating you just as you're evaluating him. Princess, he greets you in French. Welcome to Paris. I trust your journey was not too arduous. The formal question, the expected response. Thank you, Your Highness. The journey was long, but well worth the destination. A practiced line, delivered with appropriate modesty. You drop into a curtsy, eyes lowered. When you rise, you're surprised to find Prince Philip still looking at you intently, as if trying to see beyond the formal facade. You must be exhausted, he says, and there's something in his voice, a genuine concern that wasn't there in the ritual greeting. I've arranged for you to have time to rest before the formal welcome feast tonight. It's a small kindness, but unexpected. Medieval royal protocol doesn't typically prioritize comfort over ceremony. Thank you, you say again, and this time it's heartfelt. He offers his arm to escort you through the city gates. It's a symbolic gesture, the prince personally bringing his bride into his domain, but it also provides practical support for your shaky legs. You place your hand lightly on his sleeve, feeling the rich velvet beneath your fingers, and step forward into your new life. Paris in spring is beautiful, even viewed through the haze of exhaustion. The city is larger, busier, more colourful than any you've seen before. People line the streets, craning for a glimpse of their new princess. You smile and wave as you've been taught, maintaining the royal image despite your fatigue. The palace itself is overwhelming, room after room of tapestried walls and painted ceilings, furnished with pieces more delicate and ornate than the sturdy English furniture you're accustomed to. Your new chambers are spacious, bright with spring sunshine through large windows and already prepared with French furnishings interspersed with a few familiar items brought from England. I had them place your English books here, Prince Philip says, gesturing to a small table near the window. Lady Isabel mentioned you enjoy reading. Again, that unexpected thoughtfulness. You look at him with new curiosity. You speak with Lady Isabel about me. A slight flush colours his pale cheeks. I wanted to know something of my bride beyond diplomatic reports. Lady Isabel has been informative. Before you can pursue this intriguing revelation, the necessary separations of court protocol intervene. Prince Philip bows again. Rest, princess. We'll speak more at the feast. And then you're alone with your ladies, the English ones looking as overwhelmed as you feel. The French ones already efficiently unpacking, arranging, preparing for the evening's ceremonies. He seems kind, Alice ventures in English as she helps you out of your travelling clothes and into a loose robe for resting. Yes, you agree cautiously. He does. But medieval royal marriages aren't built on kindness. They're political arrangements designed to benefit kingdoms, not individuals. A prince who notices your books is still a prince who married you for your bloodline and the alliance you represent. A moment of consideration doesn't erase the fundamental transaction at the heart of your relationship. Still, as you finally stretch out on a bed that isn't moving, that isn't shared with multiple other people, that's actually long enough for your body, you find yourself thinking that perhaps, just perhaps, this forced marriage might offer more than mere endurance. Sleep claims you almost instantly, dreamless and deep after so many days of discomfort and anxiety. When Alice wakes you for the evening feast, you feel more rested than you have since leaving England. The French ladies have laid out your gown for tonight, she says, gesturing to an elaborate creation of deep blue silk trimmed with silver. It's in the French style. Of course it is. You're a French princess now, expected to look the part. Your English clothes, suitable as they were for the journey, will be quietly replaced with French fashions, just as your English habits, English expressions, English self will be gradually overwritten with French versions. The gown is beautiful, if unfamiliar in its cut and weight. The French ladies, whose names you're still struggling to remember, dress you with efficient hands, explaining the differences in how the garment fastens, how the sleeves attach, how the belt sits lower on the hips than you're accustomed to. Your hair is arranged in the French style too, braided and coiled against your head, covered with a veil that's sheerer than English propriety typically allows. Jewels are added, a necklace of sapphires, earrings of pearl, rings for several fingers. The overall effect, when you glimpse yourself in a polished metal mirror, is of someone familiar yet strange. Yourself, but filtered through French expectations. Beautiful, Lady Isabel pronounces, inspecting the final result. The court will be impressed. And Prince Philip, you ask, before you can stop yourself. Lady Isabel's eyes soften slightly. I believe he already is, Princess, but yes, he will be pleased with your appearance tonight. The feast is a blur of introductions, elaborate dishes, music and conversations in rapid French that leave you struggling to keep up despite your years of language training. You're seated beside Prince Philip at the high table with the King of France on his other side. The Queen is absent. Ill, you're told, though whether physically or mentally remains unclear. Prince Philip proves surprisingly helpful, occasionally translating a particularly rapid or idiomatic phrase quietly for your benefit. He seems genuinely concerned that you understand what's happening around you, that you aren't left adrift in the sea of French court life. Tomorrow, he tells you between courses, I'll show you the palace gardens. They're at their best in spring. I'd like that, you reply, and are surprised to realize it's true. After so many days confined in litters and ships and rain-soaked manors, the prospect of gardens in bloom is genuinely appealing, as is the chance to know more about this thoughtful, scholarly prince who notices your books and translates difficult phrases. But beneath the pleasant conversation, the beautiful surroundings, the seemingly kind attentions of your new husband, an undercurrent of anxiety persists. Tonight, after the feast, comes the true consummation of your marriage, the physical union that seals the political alliance. The beginning of what medieval society views as your primary purpose, producing heirs for France. You're 13 years old, you've been instructed in the basics of what will happen, primarily by Alice, since your mother's advice was limited to "it passes," but instruction is not experience. The unknown looms, simultaneously frightening and unavoidable. As the feast finally winds down, that anxiety sharpens to near panic. Lady Isabel appears at your side, ready to escort you to the bedchamber where the consummation will take place. In French royal tradition, you'll be ceremonially prepared for bed, blessed by a priest, and Then, left alone with your husband for the actual consummation. "Breathe, princess," Lady Isabel murmurs as you rise from the table. "Just breathe." Lady Isabel leads you through the palace corridors to a chamber you haven't seen before, larger than your assigned bedchamber. It's clearly designed for this specific purpose, the consummation of royal marriages. A massive bed dominates the space, hung with embroidered curtains displaying both English and French royal symbols. Candles illuminate the room, casting soft light and gentle shadows. Several women wait inside, French ladies you recognize from court wearing expressions of professional detachment. This too is part of medieval royal protocol. The preparation of a bride for her wedding night isn't private or personal. It's a ceremonial event, witnessed and assisted by court ladies whose role is to ensure traditions are followed correctly. "They'll help you prepare," Lady Isabel explains quietly. "I'll remain with you until after. After, when you're alone with Prince Philip, when the marriage becomes real in the most intimate way possible." The French ladies begin the ritual undressing, removing the elaborate court gown, the jewellery, the headdress. Layer by layer, your armour of formality is stripped away. You're acutely conscious of your body, still childishly thin in some places, newly curved in others. The awkward in-between state of early adolescence, not yet the fully formed woman these ladies expect you to become overnight. You're dressed in a special nightgown, white linen, finer than any you've worn before, embroidered with symbols of fertility and blessed by a priest. Your hair is unbound and brushed until it shines, falling loose around your shoulders. Rosewater is dabbed at your wrists, your throat, behind your ears. Throughout it all, you remain silent, retreating into the quiet space inside your mind where you've always found refuge from the demands of your role. Your body is being prepared as a vessel for dynastic ambitions, for the children who will cement the alliance between England and France. But your thoughts remain your own. A knock at the door. The priest enters, an elderly man with kind eyes that crinkle at the corners. He speaks the traditional blessing, invoking divine favour on the marriage bed, on the union of bodies that will produce the next generation of royalty. The French ladies curtsy deeply as he makes the sign of the cross over the bed, over you. Then it's time. The ladies withdraw, closing the door softly behind them. Only Lady Isabel remains, seated discreetly in a corner where she can witness without intruding. Because witnesses are required, medieval royal marriages must be consummated with proof to prevent later claims of non-consummation that could invalidate the union. You sit on the edge of the massive bed, hands folded in your lap, trying to remember to breathe. The silk coverlet is cool beneath your fingers. The pillows are plumped and ready, embroidered with more symbols of fertility, pomegranates, rabbits, intertwined vines. Another knock. The door opens again. Prince Philip enters, dressed in a simple robe, his hair loose around his shoulders. He looks as nervous as you feel, his slender hands fidgeting with the belt of his robe. "Princess," he says, his voice softer than at the feast. How are you feeling?" The question surprises you. It's not part of the formal script you expected. "I'm well, Your Highness," you respond automatically. He approaches the bed slowly, as if trying not to startle you. "Philip," he says. "Please call me Philip, at least when we're private." Private is a relative term with Lady Isabel still in the room, but you understand what he means. A small step toward familiarity in this most unfamiliar situation. "Philip," you repeat, the name strange on your tongue after months of referring to him only by his title. He sits beside you, leaving careful space between your bodies. "I know this is difficult," he says, his voice barely above a whisper. You're very young, and we're strangers to each other. You nod, not trusting yourself to speak. I want you to know, he continues, his eyes meeting yours directly, that I understand my duty, but I have no wish to cause you pain or fear. We have many years ahead of us. There's no need to rush. It's so unexpected, this gentle consideration, that tears spring to your eyes before you can stop them. Medieval princesses aren't supposed to cry. It's a weakness, an indulgence. But the accumulated strain of the journey, the strangeness of your situation, and now this unexpected kindness break through your careful composure. Philip looks alarmed at your tears, clearly unsure how to respond. After a moment's hesitation, he reaches out and takes your hand. His fingers are cool and smooth against yours. A scholar's hands, not a warrior's. Maybe we could just talk for tonight, he suggests, glancing toward Lady Isabel, who watches impassively from her corner. Get to know each other a little. It's not what's expected. The consummation is supposed to happen promptly, witnessed, the marriage secured, but Philip seems genuinely concerned about your comfort, your readiness. I'd like that, you whisper. And so, on your wedding night, instead of the immediate physical union that medieval custom demands, you and Prince Philip simply talk. He tells you about his studies, philosophy, astronomy, languages. You share your love of stories, of history. He speaks of his favourite places in the palace gardens, promises again to show them to you tomorrow. Lady Isabel watches, her expression unreadable. This deviation from protocol could be problematic, but she makes no move to intervene. Perhaps she too sees the value in building some foundation of understanding before the physical aspects of marriage begin. Hours pass. The candles burn lower. Your initial terror fades, replaced by cautious curiosity about this thoughtful young man who seems as constrained by his royal role as you are by yours. Finally, when the night is half gone, Philip sighs and glances at Lady Isabel. The marriage must be valid, he says, his scholarly formality returning. You nod, the anxiety fluttering back to life in your chest. But it's different now, less acute, tempered by the hours of conversation that have transformed Prince Philip from an abstract concept to a real person. A person who, at the very least, seems to view you as a person too, not just a political necessity. What follows is still uncomfortable, still strange, still painful in ways you were warned about, but Philip is gentle, apologetic, quick, and when it's done, the marriage consummated, the alliance secured in the most ancient and binding way, he doesn't immediately leave as protocol would allow. Instead, he stays beside you, his presence oddly comforting in the unfamiliar bed. Rest now, he says quietly, adjusting the covers around you. It's been a long journey for you. You drift towards sleep, exhausted by the physical and emotional demands of the day. The last thing you register is Philip's voice, very soft, saying something to Lady Isabel that sounds like "take care of her," and then darkness claims you. The next weeks and months bring a gradual adjustment to your new life in the French court. Some aspects are easier than you feared. Prince Philip keeps his promise to show you the palace gardens, which become your favourite refuge from the complexities of court politics. He makes time each day to see you, continuing the conversations begun on your wedding night, building a careful friendship that makes the required physical aspects of marriage more bearable. Other adjustments are harder. The French court is indeed more formal, more politically fraught than your father's. Alliances shift constantly. Whispers follow you through the corridors. The English princess, the foreigner, the child bride whose accent still betrays her origins, despite Lady Isabel's intensive coaching. "They're testing you," Lady Isabel explains after one particularly difficult court gathering where several French ladies deliberately spoke too quickly for you to follow, looking for weaknesses they can exploit. "Why?" you ask, frustrated by the constant scrutiny, the subtle undermining. "What does it matter to them how I speak, how I dress, how I conduct myself?" Lady Isabel's face softens with rare sympathy. "Because you have what they want, a place at the centre of power, a prince's ear, the potential to be mother to the next generation of royalty. It's a stark reminder of the medieval reality. Your value lies not in yourself, but in your position, your connections, your womb. And in this world where women have so little direct power, those things make you both a target and a potential ally worth cultivating. So what do I do?" you ask. "Watch, listen, learn who can be trusted and who cannot." Lady Isabel straightens your veil with practiced hands. "And give France an heir as soon as possible. Nothing will secure your position more effectively. But months pass and your courses continue to arrive with predictable regularity. No pregnancy, no heir, no strengthened position. You're not particularly concerned. You're barely 14, still growing into your adult body, but the court notices. Whispers change from comments about your accent to speculation about your fertility. The king begins to look at you with slight disappointment when you're presented at formal occasions. Even Philip, kind as he is, occasionally asks if you're feeling well, if there's anything troubling you that might prevent conception. "It will happen when God wills it," your mother wrote in her one brief letter since your departure from England, cold comfort from a woman who produced her first child within a year of marriage. Spring turns to summer, summer to autumn. You settle into the rhythms of French court life. Your French improves to near-native fluency. You learn the complex web of relationships that governs court politics, begin to navigate it with growing confidence. You find unexpected allies, a few French ladies who prove less hostile than others, an elderly countess who takes a grandmotherly interest in your education, even the king's personal chaplain who admires your devotion during religious services. And through it all, your relationship with Philip evolves from awkward formality to genuine companionship. He shares his books with you, discusses ideas other men would consider too complex for female understanding. You learn that he dislikes hunting, prefers music to military exercises, and has a surprisingly dry sense of humour that emerges only in private. "You're not what I expected," he confesses one evening as you sit together in your private chambers, a rare moment of true privacy with all attendants dismissed. "What did you expect?" you ask, curious about the image he had formed of his English bride. "Someone more—" He hesitates, searching for the word. "Conventional, perhaps. Someone who would accept without questioning." "And that's not me?" You're not sure whether to be pleased or worried by this assessment. Philip smiles, the genuine smile that transforms his scholarly features. "No, it's not. You have thoughts of your own, opinions, questions. It's refreshing. Refreshing. Not appropriate, not proper, not suitable, just refreshing. It's perhaps the greatest compliment you've received since coming to France." Winter arrives, bringing new challenges. The palace, for all its grandeur, is cold. Tapestries and carpets can only do so much against the bitter wind that finds every crack in the stone walls. You fall ill with a fever that leaves you weak and shaking for days, attended by the royal physician whose remedies, bleeding, purging, strange-smelling poultices, seem to make you worse rather than better. Philip visits daily, despite the risk of contagion, bringing books to read aloud when your own eyes are too tired to focus on the pages. It's during your recovery, as you lie propped up on pillows, listening to his voice shape the words of ancient philosophers, that you realise something has changed between you. Not love, perhaps. Medieval royal marriages rarely involve that convenient emotion, but something like affection. A genuine care for each other's well-being that transcends political necessity. And then, as spring returns to Paris, bringing the first fragile blossoms to the palace gardens, your courses fail to arrive. Once, then twice. The royal physician confirms what your body has already told you. You're with child. The alliance will have its heir. The news transforms your position at court overnight. The king smiles warmly when you're presented at formal gatherings. The previously hostile French ladies suddenly find reasons to seek your company, offer advice, express concern for your health. Philip looks at you with a mixture of pride and worry that you find unexpectedly touching. "Are you afraid?" he asks privately when the initial flurry of congratulations has passed. You consider lying, presenting the brave face expected of a royal woman facing the dangerous territory of childbirth, but the concern in his eyes deserves honesty. "Yes," you admit, "I am." He takes your hand, a gesture that has become familiar over the months of your marriage. "I've arranged for the best midwives in France," he says, "and I've sent for a physician from Italy who specialises in difficult births." It's more consideration than most medieval husbands would show. Most would simply assume that childbirth is women's business, a mysterious process best left to midwives and God's will. Philip's practical efforts to ensure your safety touch you deeply. Your pregnancy progresses through spring and summer, your body changing in ways both fascinating and alarming. The royal physician monitors you closely, as does Lady Isabel, whose role has evolved from strict taskmaster to something almost like a friend. "You're doing well," she assures you after each examination. "The child grows strong." But beneath the reassurances, you're acutely aware of the dangers. You've seen it in your own family. Women who died bringing new life into the world, children who survived only days or hours, the terrible grief that follows such losses. Medieval childbirth is a battlefield where women fight alone, armed only with faith and the accumulated wisdom of generations of midwives. In the autumn, as your time approaches, you're moved to the Queen's chambers, the traditional birthing room for royal women. The space is prepared according to ancient customs, windows covered to prevent harmful air from entering, floors strewn with fresh herbs. Thought to prevent infection, religious relics positioned around the bed for spiritual protection. The labour begins on a cool September morning, your waters breaking suddenly as you walk in the private garden with Lady Isabel. The pain follows quickly, stronger than you imagined, more relentless. You're helped to the birthing chamber, where the midwives and female attendants are already gathering. Men, including Philip, are excluded, childbirth being considered exclusively women's domain in medieval Europe. What follows is a battle unlike any you could have prepared for. Hours of pain that rises and falls like ocean waves, growing more intense as the day progresses into evening. The midwives offer herbal concoctions to ease the pain, to speed the birth. They position and reposition your body to help the child's passage. They pray over you, invoking saints associated with safe delivery. Through it all, Lady Isabel remains at your side, holding your hand, wiping your brow, whispering encouragement when your strength falters. This, too, is unexpected. This fierce support from a woman who began as your instructor in French ways and has somehow become your defender, your ally. Night falls. The pain intensifies. The midwives exchange worried glances as your labour extends beyond what's considered normal. You catch fragments of their whispered conversations, concerns about your youth, your size, the position of the child. "The Italian physician," Lady Isabel demands. "Bring him now." There's resistance. Men aren't traditionally allowed in the birthing chamber, but Lady Isabel's authority, backed by Prince Philip's prior instructions, prevails. The Italian doctor arrives, washing his hands thoroughly in wine before examining you, an unusual practice that raises eyebrows among the traditional midwives. The child is turned wrong, he announces after his examination. It must be repositioned or neither mother nor infant will survive. What follows is excruciating. The doctor's hands inside you, turning the baby, guided by experience and anatomical knowledge unusual for medieval medicine. You scream despite your royal training, beyond caring about dignity or composure. This is survival, raw and desperate. And then, miraculously, relief. The baby shifts. Your body, recognizing the change, responds with renewed effort. The midwives return to their positions, encouraging, supporting, guiding. "Push, princess," Lady Isabel urges, her composed facade cracking to show genuine fear and hope beneath. "Push now. With the last of your strength, you obey." There's a final, tearing pain, and then the midwife's triumphant cry, "A boy, a healthy boy, the heir, the living embodiment of the alliance between England and France, the child who, God willing, will one day unite the interests of both kingdoms." You collapse against the sweat-soaked pillows, barely conscious as the midwives clean the baby, wrap him in fine linen, place him briefly on your chest before whisking him away to be properly bathed and presented to his father. "You did well," Lady Isabel tells you, her voice uncharacteristically gentle. "Rest now. The hard part is over." But it isn't. Quite. Medieval childbirth dangers extend beyond the actual delivery. Infection, bleeding, milk fever all claim countless new mothers in the days and weeks after birth. You're confined to the birthing chamber for the traditional month of lying in, attended by midwives and physicians who monitor you for signs of complications. The baby, officially named Henri after his paternal grandfather, the king, is brought to you for feeding several times each day. Against custom, you insist on nursing him yourself rather than immediately engaging a wet nurse. It's a small rebellion against court protocol, but one Philip supports after consulting with the Italian physician who believes a mother's milk provides the best chance for infant survival. These quiet moments with your son become precious islands of peace in the otherwise strictly regulated routine of medieval royal motherhood. When you hold him, feeling his small weight against your chest, watching his perfect fingers curl and uncurl, you understand something medieval philosophy never taught you, that love isn't just a philosophical concept or a religious duty. It's this fierce, protective connection that transcends politics, duty, even the circumstances of his conception. Philip visits daily, watching with scholarly curiosity as you nurse the child, occasionally asking questions about the process that make Lady Isabel purse her lips in disapproval. His interest in his son is genuine, if somewhat detached. Medieval fathers, particularly royal ones, typically maintained distance from infants, becoming more involved as children grew old enough for formal education. "He has your eyes," Philip observes one afternoon, studying the baby's face with the same concentration he brings to astronomical charts. "But my mother's chin, I think." It's an unexpected observation from a medieval husband, this acknowledgement of your contribution to the child beyond simply carrying and delivering him. Most would see the son as a continuation of the paternal line only, the mother a necessary but ultimately unimportant vessel. "What do you wish for him?" you ask, curious about Philip's vision for this child who represents so much politically. Philip considers the question seriously, as he does all questions. That he be wiser than his grandfather, he finally says, so quietly that only you can hear. That he rule with intellect rather than might. It's a revealing answer, a glimpse of Philip's own complex relationship with his father, the warrior king who has always seemed somewhat bemused by his scholarly second son, and it's a trust, this honest answer shared only with you. As the traditional month of confinement ends, you prepare to re-enter court life, to present yourself and the heir at formal ceremonies, to resume your duties as princess. Your body still aches from the ordeal of childbirth, still feels strangely hollow and unfamiliar. But your mind is clearer, sharper, somehow more your own than before. Something has changed, not just physically, but in your understanding of your place in this world that treats women as political commodities. You've survived the most dangerous journey a medieval woman can undertake. You've produced the heir that secures your position. You've fulfilled the primary duty of a royal wife. And in doing so, you've gained a measure of freedom, not the complete autonomy a modern woman might expect, but significant space within the constraints of medieval royal life. Freedom to establish your own household routines, freedom to select additional ladies who share your interests, freedom to pursue the intellectual curiosities Philip has encouraged. What would you like to do now? Philip asks, on the eve of your return to court, sitting beside your bed where you nurse the baby one last time before handing him to the wet nurse who will care for him overnight. It's an extraordinary question from a medieval husband to his wife. The expected answer would be dutiful submission to whatever he decides. But that's not what Philip is asking. He's genuinely interested in your desires, your choices. I'd like to learn more, you say after a moment's thought, about astronomy, about philosophy, about the things you study. Philip looks surprised, then pleased. I can arrange for tutors, books, and I'd like to establish a proper library, you continue, the idea taking shape as you speak. For Henri, when he's older, but also for others, for girls who might not otherwise have access to learning. It's a small rebellion against the limitations placed on female education, but one that falls within the acceptable bounds of a princess's charitable works. Philip nods thoughtfully. A royal library with works in both French and English, he suggests, building on your idea. A bridge between our cultures, just as Henri will be. Just as you are, he doesn't say, but the implication is clear. You too serve as a living bridge between kingdoms, not just a political token, not just a vessel for heirs, but an active participant in creating understanding between different worlds. In that moment, something shifts in your relationship with Philip. Not romantic love as modern people might understand it, but a partnership of minds that transcends the political arrangement of your marriage, a recognition of each other as individuals with thoughts and ambitions beyond your prescribed roles. As you drift towards sleep, your body healing, your mind full of plans for the library that will become your legacy, you realize that you've found something unexpected in this life that was forced upon you. Not perfect happiness. Medieval life offers few guarantees of that, especially for women. But purpose, meaning, agency within constraints. You've survived the dangerous journey from English princess to French wife and mother. You've navigated court politics, language barriers, physical trials, and emerged stronger, clearer about who you are beyond the titles and expectations. The medieval princess's life is never truly her own, but within the gilded cage, you've carved out space for yourself, space to think, to learn, to influence the next generation through your son and through the library that will bear your name long after you're gone. It's not a fairy tale ending. There will still be court politics to navigate, still the expectation of producing more children, still the fundamental inequalities of medieval society. But it's a beginning of a life that belongs at least partially to you, not just to the kingdoms you connect. As sleep claims you, you find yourself thinking of your mother's ring, still hidden beneath your gloves most days, the tangible link to generations of women who came before you, who also found ways to preserve something of themselves within the constraints of their times. You're one of them now, not just a pawn in the great game of medieval politics, but a player with limited yet real moves available to you. A woman navigating the narrow path between duty and selfhood, between what's expected and what's possible. And somehow that knowledge makes the heavy tapestried bed feel warmer, the strange French palace feel a little more like home, the future stretch before you, not just as obligation, but as possibility. Sleep comes gently, wrapping around you like the softest of blankets, carrying you toward dreams where libraries grow, knowledge spreads, and princesses write their own stories within the margins of history, and perhaps as you drift deeper into that peaceful darkness. You might find yourself sinking deeper into your own bed, centuries away from medieval constraints, free to dream of all the possibilities that women after you would gradually, painfully win.